You sit by the fire while the darkness presses in. The shadows beyond the light hide teeth and claws. Something small whimpers in the tall grass. You do not throw a rock but instead reach out your hand. Why would your ancient brain tell you to touch the enemy? The cold is absolute and unending. The prehistoric landscape stretches out like a flat canvas of muted pastel colors. Pale blues and soft grays dominate the freezing dawn. You are a simple figure standing against an endless horizon. Survival is a constant and brutal daily struggle. Calories are incredibly scarce and deeply precious. How could you ever justify feeding a deadly predator? You are a prehistoric hunter-gatherer living 30,000 years ago. Your days are spent tracking large and dangerous prey across the frozen tundra. The mammoth and the steppe bison can easily crush your bones. You carry a heavy emotional burden passed down through countless harsh winters. This generational silence weighs heavily on your shivering shoulders. You need every single scrap of meat you can find just to survive the freeze. Are the wolves not the absolute greatest threat to your vulnerable family? You see them lurking constantly on the edge of the firelight. The boldest wolves step closer to the radiating warmth of your camp. They smell the roasting bones and the marrow of your recent kill. They are starving just like you and your children are starving. The emotional labor of keeping your family alive leaves you completely exhausted. What if there is another way to survive the ice without endless fighting? The darkness is absolute outside the small ring of your fire. The wind howls across the glacial landscape. You hold a wooden spear tightly in your calloused hands. Your heart beats slowly and steadily in your chest. The flat expanse of the snow reflects the dim moonlight. Why do you suddenly feel a strange sense of curiosity instead of fear? Anthropologist Pat Shipman studied this exact pivotal moment in human history. She proposed the animal connection hypothesis to explain our distant past. She realized that human evolution is deeply tied to our relationship with other living species. We are the only animals on Earth that extensively study the daily habits of other apex predators. Did this constant observation physically change the internal structure of your brain? You watch the wild wolves moving quietly in the bright white snow. You see how they communicate with each other using subtle physical gestures. You see how they coordinate their swift attacks on the weak and the dying prey. You realize they are very much like you and your own human tribe. They also carry the heavy emotional burden of keeping their pack alive. Could you somehow use their specialized hunting skills to your own distinct advantage? A lone wolf pup wanders directly into your busy camp. Its mother is dead and the pack has left it far behind. It is shivering violently in the freezing winter wind. Your ancient survival instincts tell you to kill it immediately for easy food. Your stomach aches with a profound and hollow hunger. Why do you suddenly lower your heavy spear and spare its fragile life? Your human brain is heavily wired for deep emotional empathy. The powerful hormone oxytocin floods your nervous system instantly. It is the exact same chemical that bonds a human mother to her newborn infant. The pup has large round eyes and a very delicate face. It is a visual metaphor for complete and utter vulnerability. Does your ancient brain even know the physical difference between a wolf pup and a human baby? Modern biological science shows that it absolutely does not. The neural pathways overlap completely in your complex emotional mind. The biological cuteness response is violently and automatically triggered. You carefully pick up the frightened pup and share your meager scraps of food. You project your own need for comfort onto this tiny shivering creature. How will this single act of mercy change the entire biological course of human history? The ancient buried bones tell the true and shocking story. Deep in the Goyet cave in modern-day Belgium, researchers found a specific ancient skull. It is exactly 31,000 years old. It looks very much like a wild wolf, but it is structurally very different. It is a profound physical record of a brand new relationship. Was this the very first true companion of humanity? This skull belonged to a Paleolithic dog. It lived directly alongside ancient humans in the frozen limestone caves. It ate cooked human food instead of raw bloody meat. It died near the safety of warm human fires. The generational silence between species was finally broken. How did the fierce wild wolf gradually become the gentle tame dog? It was not a conscious choice made by your ancient ancestors. You did not wake up one morning and plan to invent the domestic dog. The wolves domesticated themselves over many long and brutal generations. The friendliest wolves simply got the most discarded food from the human hunters. They stepped out of the wild darkness and into the soft pastel light of the morning fire. Did pure kindness become the ultimate survival strategy for a wild predator? This steady evolutionary process drastically changed their internal biology. Russian geneticist Dmitry Belyaev proved this entirely with captive silver foxes. He bred only the tamest foxes for several continuous decades. He only selected for gentle behavior and completely ignored their physical appearance. The wildness slowly drained away like water soaking into dry sand. Why did their ears suddenly become floppy and their coats become spotted? The scientific answer lies in something called neural crest cells. These special cells develop very early in the growing animal embryo. They control the release of adrenaline, but they also heavily control pigment and rigid cartilage. By selecting for tameness, the foxes naturally developed white patches and curly tails. Their bodies became a visual map of their new gentle psychology. Did your ancestors witness this exact same strange physical transformation around the prehistoric campfire? The wild wolves around your ancient fire fundamentally changed forever. They shrank in physical size and their rough coats changed color. They entirely lost their natural genetic fear of your loud voice. They started reading your subtle facial expressions with incredible accuracy. They understood the heavy emotional labor you performed every single day. Can any other wild animal instinctively understand a human pointing finger? Even the smartest chimpanzees cannot do this simple physical task. But the newly evolved wolves certainly could understand your human gestures. They became a literal extension of your own hunting body. The dog tracked the invisible scent while you threw the heavy wooden spear. The landscape was no longer an isolated and terrifying place. Who was really saving who in this frozen, brutal wasteland? Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the immense power of firelight conversations. She found that ancient people used the fire to build massive social networks. They shared complex stories and deep emotional bonds late into the night. The dogs became a permanent and vital part of these glowing fireside circles. The muted colors of the ash and the bright orange flames created a sanctuary. Did the fire physically tame the wildness inside both the human and the wolf? The new bond grew far deeper than simple hunting utility. It became something deeply spiritual and incredibly emotional for both species. Let us recreate a typical day 12,000 years ago. The great ice sheets have finally retreated and the earth is green again. The world is painted in warm, vibrant tones instead of flat, icy blues. What happens when your loyal animal companion suddenly dies of old age? You live in the Levant as part of the ancient Natufian culture. The world is getting warmer and the wild wheat is growing tall. You dig a shallow grave in the soft, warm earth. It is located at the famous archaeological site of Ain Malaha. Your heart aches with a very specific kind of quiet grief. Why do you gently bury a dog exactly like you would bury a human being? You place the body of an elder human carefully in the dirt pit. You carefully place a young puppy in the grave right next to them. You arrange the dead human hand to rest gently on the tiny puppy. The hard biological barrier between separate species has completely dissolved. It is a powerful visual metaphor for eternal companionship. Has anything really changed in our human hearts since that ancient burial? Here is the strange and highly counterintuitive truth about domestication. We think we actively conquered wild nature with our sharp weapons. We think we tamed the fierce beasts with our vastly superior human intellect. We think we are the undisputed masters of the entire natural earth. The reality is much softer and far more complex. Is domestication actually a mutual biological surrender instead of a violent conquest? The wild animals deliberately chose us first. They saw the bright fire and felt the radiating heat in the endless cold. They surrendered their absolute wildness for ultimate daily security. They traded their total freedom for guaranteed calories and physical safety. They recognized the silent offer of mutual emotional support. We did not tame the wild dog, but the wild dog definitely tamed us. The human brain physically shrank during this long biological process. As we lived closer to domestic animals, we lost some of our own aggressive wildness. Our faces became softer and our teeth became smaller. We effectively domesticated ourselves right alongside the wolves. The heavy burden of solitary survival was finally lifted from our shoulders. Did we become more human simply because we learned to love an animal? Anthropologist Richard Lee observed modern hunter-gatherers in the harsh Kalahari Desert. His famous 1963 study of the Jew/Hoansi people revealed a startling truth. They did not spend all their time desperately searching for scattered food. They spent a massive portion of their time resting and socializing in the camp. The landscape provided enough for those who knew how to gently ask for it. Does this abundance of free time explain our deep capacity for cross-species empathy? When survival is not a constant agonizing struggle, the mind opens up. The human brain seeks complex connection and emotional stimulation. The early dogs provided a deep emotional anchor in a terrifying and unpredictable world. They were not just tools for hunting but vital members of the ancient family structure. They absorbed the silent anxieties of their human counterparts. Could a human even be considered fully human without a dog sleeping nearby? James Sussman expanded on this profound realization in his extensive anthropological work. He noted that ancient humans viewed animals not as lesser beings but as powerful equals. The environment was a shared space of mutual respect and constant silent negotiation. You did not dominate the flat landscape but rather you participated deeply within it. The animals were fellow travelers carrying their own unique burdens. Did this ancient worldview make it incredibly easy to adopt an orphan predator? You find more physical evidence hidden deep inside the dark Chauvet cave. You walk through ancient chambers filled with breathtaking prehistoric art. You see the faint fossilized footprints of a young boy walking softly in the wet mud. Next to the human footprints are the unmistakable tracks of a large prehistoric dog. The simple shapes tell a story of profound trust and companionship. Were they walking together as equal partners in the terrifying subterranean darkness? The evidence of this bond is scattered across the entire prehistoric globe. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, ancient humans left traces of complex symbolic thought. They understood the deep interconnectedness of the vast natural world. They processed red ochre to paint their skin and their sacred objects. They created visual metaphors to explain the terrifying mysteries of existence. Did they also mark their most loyal animal companions with this sacred red clay? The emotional labor of survival was no longer a solitary human endeavor. The dogs guarded the camps while the humans slept deeply and peacefully. The humans provided steady food while the dogs offered their incredibly sharp senses. It was a perfect and beautiful synchronization of two entirely different species. The generational silence of the wild was replaced by the comforting sound of breathing. How many ancient children survived the freezing winter purely because a dog kept them warm? As the centuries passed, this relationship became encoded into our very genetics. Your body actively anticipates the presence of an animal companion. Your nervous system calms down when you feel soft fur under your hands. Your breathing slows and your blood pressure drops significantly. It is a physiological echo of a choice made 30,000 years ago. Does your modern body still remember the freezing cold of the Pleistocene epoch? The ancient dogs walked alongside you as you migrated across the continents. They crossed the Bering Land Bridge into the vast unknown of the Americas. They adapted to the scorching deserts and the freezing Arctic circles. They changed their shapes and sizes to match the diverse human environments. They became living mirrors reflecting our own immense adaptability. What other species has traveled so far simply because they wanted to be near us? Let us examine the incredible psychology of the modern dog. They are completely obsessed with human faces and human voices. They will actively ignore a piece of meat just to receive a gentle pat on the head. They have evolved specialized facial muscles just to make their eyes look larger and sadder. They know exactly how to manipulate your ancient emotional cuteness response. Have they effectively hacked the human nervous system for their own benefit? This deep genetic memory is permanently etched into your DNA. It explains why you cannot look away from a suffering creature. It explains why a lost bird or a stranded whale triggers a profound emotional response. Your ancestors survived specifically because they paid close attention to the animals. The pastel colors of your modern world are still painted with ancient instincts. How heavily does that ancient responsibility weigh on your modern shoulders? Fast forward to your busy and chaotic life today. You are sitting quietly in your modern comfortable living room. A pregnant stray cat suddenly drops a tiny kitten directly on your front porch. A hungry stray dog follows you closely all the way home from the loud market. The simple round head of the animal looks up at you with complete expectation. Why do they instinctively come to us when they are desperate and dying? You see a viral video of a wild animal seeking urgent human help. A bear cub with its head stuck in a glass jar approaches a terrified hiker. A massive ocean whale swims to a small fishing boat to have thick line removed. They come directly to us because of a deep ancient genetic memory. The barrier between the wild and the domestic is completely porous. Do they know that we are the only creatures capable of saving them? For tens of thousands of years, humans have been the ultimate solvers of difficult problems. We are the unique creatures with the highly nimble hands and the sharp tools. We are the strange creatures with the seemingly infinite and magical food supply. They know this fundamental truth deep in their dense animal bones. They see us as the ultimate guardians of the natural world. What other animal on earth can look directly into your soul and ask for help? When you look deeply into a dog's eyes today, a powerful chemical loop is finally closed. Researcher Takefumi Kikusui precisely measured this incredible invisible hormonal phenomenon. When you make direct eye contact, both of your oxytocin levels massively spike. It is a profound biological feedback loop crossing the vast and ancient species barrier. The generational silence is completely shattered by a single look. Does it not feel like pure unexplainable magic happening right in your living room? This is why losing a pet feels exactly like losing a human family member. Your brain does not distinguish between biological children and adopted animal companions. The grief is deep and raw and completely authentic. You are mourning the loss of a bond that took 30,000 years to perfectly forge. You are carrying the exact same emotional burden as the ancient Natufian mourners. Why do we willingly open our hearts knowing that it will eventually break? We do it because the alternative is a vast and terrifying loneliness. The universe is incredibly large and mostly empty and very cold. Finding another species willing to sit by the fire with us is a miracle. It is the greatest and most successful biological experiment in the history of the Earth. We learn to communicate without using any words at all. Is this silent understanding the greatest art form humanity has ever created? Your ancient ancestors survived because they completely opened their social circle. They looked at the terrifying wild landscape and found a quiet, peaceful reflection. They happily shared their precious meat and they warmly shared their bright fire. They built a massive biological bridge of pure empathy over a frozen river of ice. They carried the emotional labor together so that neither had to carry it alone. You are the living, breathing result of that ancient successful partnership. The darkness still presses in around your modern world, but you will always reach out your hand.